Ladies and gentlemen, if you are enjoying my videos, please click the like button. It is the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me. I would be very grateful to you. Harvest of Blood. Scary story published by Scare Fiction. Read for you by Sacred Fiction. Chapter 1. The Summons. A crumpled envelope, the ecru paper marred by a dark brown stain, landed with a dull thud on Ethan's kitchen counter. It wasn't the return address that sent a jolt of icy dread through him, though the spidery handwriting in faded blue ink was unmistakable. It was the postmark. Harrow Creek. 10 years. 10 years since he'd slammed the door shut on that place, vowing never to set foot in its suffocating embrace again. Ethan hesitated, the letter a physical manifestation of a past he desperately tried to bury. Memories flooded back, vivid and unwelcome. 10-year-old Lucas, his bright eyes and gap-toothed grin dissolving into the swirling fog of the bone orchard like smoke. The frantic search parties, the hushed accusations, the ever-present, suffocating guilt. The townsfolk's cold stares, their whispers branding him a monster, an unlucky charm. He'd left with nothing but a backpack full of clothes and a heart full of lead. He tore the envelope open, the musty scent of old paper assaulting his nostrils. The single page inside held a cryptic message scrawled in the same shaky hand. Ethan, you must come back. The harvest approaches and the shadows grow longer. Only you can break the cycle. Come to the old house on Elm Street. Hurry, grandfather. The cycle, the shadows. Harrow Creek had always reveled in its macabre folklore, but this felt different, a desperate plea laced with a chilling certainty. He scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. Superstition and small-town secrets, those were the lifeblood of Harrow Creek. Yet, a sliver of unease remained. Sleep offered no solace that night. Lucas's face haunted him, a silent accusation in his wide, terrified eyes. In his dreams, the bone orchard materialized, twisted trees clawing at the fog, and whispers slithered through the air, weaving a chilling tale of sacrifice and a hungry darkness. Morning light brought a decision. He wouldn't go back because of some cryptic message. He wouldn't go back to face the ghosts of his past. But Lucas, the thought of his brother trapped in that nightmare, if only in his dreams, gnawed at him. He had to know. He had to lay the ghosts to rest, one way or another. Packing a duffel with a bare minimum, Ethan glanced at the dusty baseball cap hanging by the door. It had been Lucas' favorite, a faded blue with a worn-out team logo. He tucked it into his bag, a silent promise whispered in the stillness of the room. As he drove, the highway morphing into a familiar two-lane road, a sense of dread settled in his gut. The town hadn't changed much. Weathered houses, huddled together, their paint peeling like scabs. The air hung heavy, thick with an unspoken unease. A banner fluttered across the town square, its faded paint proclaiming the upcoming harvest festival. A chill snaked down his spine. He pulled up in front of his grandfather's house, a neglected Victorian shrouded in shadows. Porch swing creaked mournfully in the breeze, a lonely lament. Taking a deep breath, Ethan stepped onto the porch, a single word echoing in the emptiness. Lucas? Chapter 2. A Town of Whispers. The rusty hinges screeched in protest as Ethan pushed open the creaking front door. Dust motes danced in the shaft of sunlight that sliced through the grime-coated window. The air hung thick with the scent of neglect and decay, a fitting metaphor for his own buried memories. A faded portrait on the wall stared down at him, the stern face of his grandfather etched with worry lines even back then. Ethan's heart ached. He'd never understood their strained relationship, the unspoken accusations that hung heavy between them after Lucas vanished. A floorboard creaked behind him, sending a jolt of adrenaline through him. He spun around, hand instinctively reaching for the empty space at his hip where his phone used to be, a casualty of his hurried departure. There, standing in the doorway, was a woman. Her face, lined and weathered, was etched with a familiar sorrow. It was Sarah, his childhood friend, Lucas's playmate, the one who had always believed in him, even when the town ostracized him. Relief washed over him, battling the undercurrent of fear. "Sarah?" His voice rasped, unused to breaking the silence that had become his life. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You came back." There was a hug, hesitant at first, then tightening as a wave of grief washed over them both. Ethan pulled back, searching her face. "What's going on here, Sarah? Why did grandfather send for me?" Her smile faltered. He hasn't been well for a while. You know how he was, always cryptic." She glanced nervously around the room. "Come on, let's get out of here. There's a place we can talk." They found a quiet booth at the back of the Rusty Nail, the town's only bar. The air reeked of stale beer and desperation. The few patrons remaining eyed Ethan with a mixture of suspicion and fear. "It's not safe anymore," Sarah said, her voice low. "The harvest, it's getting worse." Ethan frowned. "What harvest? What are you talking about?" "The Bone Orchard," she breathed. "That's why they called it Harrow Creek. The orchards used to bring prosperity, bountiful harvests year after year. But there's a darkness there, Ethan, something older than the town itself." She spoke in hushed tones, a cloak and dagger performance that felt strangely at odds with the dusty bar. Yet, the raw fear in her eyes was undeniable. She painted a grim picture, whispers carried on the wind, twisted shadows flitting just beyond sight, and a chilling silence that descended upon the orchard before each harvest. And then she spoke of the sacrifices. Every year, on the eve of the harvest festival, one unfortunate soul was chosen to appease this darkness. A lottery system? A morbid dance with fate? Ethan felt a cold dread pool in his stomach. "Lucas," he whispered, the name catching in his throat. Sarah nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "The year he disappeared, your name and his were both in the lottery bowl." Her voice cracked. "They chose him." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Relief, tinged with a bitter edge of guilt, warred with a newfound terror. Lucas wasn't lost, not exactly. His fate was far more horrifying. The Bone Orchard, once the backdrop of childhood adventures, now loomed as a place of nightmares. It wasn't just Lucas Ethan had to face. He had to confront a darkness that had poisoned his hometown and stolen his brother 10 years ago. Chapter 3: Secrets of the Orchard. Sarah's words echoed in Ethan's ears as he stood outside the town limits, the Bone Orchard looming before him. The lush expanse he remembered from childhood was gone. Twisted, gnarled trees clawed at the sky, their skeletal branches reaching like accusing fingers. A thick fog clung to the ground, obscuring the depths and muffling any sounds that might emanate from within. Ethan took a deep breath, the crisp autumn air, a stark contrast to the oppressive atmosphere of the orchard. He held a rusty flashlight Sarah had procured, its beam a fragile spear against the encroaching darkness. Stepping forward, dust kicked up from the cracked earth, leaving a ghostly trail behind him. The silence was unnatural, broken only by the unsettling creak of branches swaying in a non-existent breeze. Then, whispers, fainter at first, like rustling leaves, but growing clearer, weaving a chilling symphony of malice in his head. They spoke in a language he didn't understand, Yet their intent was crystal clear: fear, hunger, and a possessive attachment to this place. Panic clawed at his throat. He pushed on, the weak beam of light revealing gruesome remnants of past sacrifices. A tattered scarecrow, its straw torso ripped open, stuffed with decaying animal bones. A single, rusted boot glinting accusingly in the sparse light. With each discovery, the weight of the town's dark secret pressed down on him. A sudden, grotesque movement caught his eye. In the distance, a twisted figure lurched between the trees. It was humanoid in shape, but grotesquely warped. Its skin stretched taut over an impossible skeletal frame, and its limbs twisted at unnatural angles. It let out a guttural screech, a sound that sent shivers down his spine and froze him in his tracks. Terror propelled him forward. He sprinted through the grasping branches, the whispers becoming a cacophony of fury behind him. He stumbled, his ankle twisting on a hidden root. As he rolled to catch himself, the creature loomed over him, its fetid breath washing over him. Its eyes, milky white and devoid of pupils, were locked on him. A primal scream ripped from his throat as he scrambled back, adrenaline fueling his frantic movements. He lunged for his backpack, desperation urging him on. He fumbled with the zipper, pulling out a canister of pepper spray, a souvenir from a forgotten camping trip. He aimed and unleashed a stream of burning liquid. Creature recoiled with a shrill shriek, its warped face contorting in pain. It retreated into the fog, momentarily blinded. Taking advantage of the reprieve, Ethan scrambled to his feet and bolted. He didn't dare look back, fueled by a primal fear that propelled him forward. He burst from the fog-shrouded trees, heart hammering in his chest. The familiar outline of the town came into view, a beacon of relative safety. But before he could reach the tree line, a group of figures emerged from the shadows. They were townspeople, faces etched with a mixture of fear and anger. "What were you doing in there?" A burly man with a thick beard growled, stepping forward. "The orchard, it ain't safe for you to be messing around." Ethan, gasping for breath, pointed back at the swirling fog. There's something in there. We have to..." "Shut your mouth, boy." A skinny woman with a haunted look in her eyes hissed. "Don't you understand? You can't disrupt the balance. It's the only way to keep everyone else safe." Ethan stared at them, his mind reeling. These weren't the fearful townspeople Sarah described. These people were hardened, their faces etched with a strange resignation. It wasn't just fear they carried. It was a heavy burden of knowledge and a desperate need to maintain a monstrous status quo. Chapter 4. The Grandfather's Legacy. Sarah helped him back to her ramshackle apartment, the silence between them heavy with unspoken dread. Ethan's encounter in the bone orchard had left him physically battered and emotionally fragile. The image of the twisted creature haunted his nightmares, fueling the fire of his resolve. Days bled into each other, a monotonous blur of throbbing bruises and a gnawing sense of urgency. Sarah nursed him back to health, her presence a source of comfort and a reminder of the past he was fighting to reclaim. He spent his days hunched over a dusty table in Sarah's cramped living room, poring over his grandfather's belongings. Tucked away in a forgotten drawer, he found a leather-bound journal, the pages filled with his grandfather's spidery handwriting and a multitude of cryptic symbols. Days turned into weeks as Ethan painstakingly deciphered the code, his memory jogging loose snippets of forgotten conversations. His grandfather, once a respected historian, had become obsessed with the town's dark history. He had stumbled upon the truth about the bone orchard, the pact with the entity for bountiful harvests, and the horrifying price that came with it, the yearly lottery of sacrifice. A chill ran down Ethan's spine as he read about the ritual, an ancient summoning that appeased the entity and maintained the precarious balance. But there were warnings too, scribbled in frantic haste, whispers of a forbidden knowledge hidden within the town, a way to sever the pact without further bloodshed. The final line of the journal sent a jolt of excitement through him. The answer lies within the walls, where shadows whisper and memories sleep. He knew exactly where to look. The old house on Elm Street, his childhood home, now stood abandoned, a monument to his fractured past. The townsfolk avoided it, whispering about secrets buried within. Sarah, hesitant but fiercely loyal, agreed to accompany him. The house loomed large and foreboding in the fading twilight. A shiver ran through Ethan as he pushed open the creaking front door, dust motes swirling in the dim light. The air hung heavy with a sense of forgotten memories. Following an obscure clue in the journal, they navigated a labyrinth of dusty rooms. Behind a boarded-up fireplace, they found a hidden passage, a narrow stairway leading down and into darkness. Armed with a flickering oil lamp, they descended, the air growing colder with each step. The passage opened into a small, circular room, its stone walls lined with ancient symbols that echoed the ones in his grandfather's journal. In the center of the room, a heavy wooden chest lay open, revealing a single leather-bound book, its cover adorned with an unsettling sigil. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. This was the forbidden knowledge his grandfather spoke of. Here, within these pages, might lie the key to breaking the pact and freeing Harrow Creek from the clutches of the entity. But the knowledge itself might come at a terrible cost, as a new inscription on the first page ominously declared, "Those who seek the light must walk through the darkest of shadows." News of Ethan's daring exploration of the Bone Orchard spread like wildfire through the town. Walls had ears, and the townspeople were a tight-knit community. Fear and suspicion simmered, dividing the already fractured population. Some, hardened by years of living under the entity's rule, saw Ethan as a threat to the fragile peace. Others, those who had lost loved ones to the lottery, clung to a flicker of hope that he might hold the key to ending the horror. As Ethan delved deeper into the forbidden book, he realized the battle wasn't just against the entity, but against a tide of fear and desperation that had taken root in Harrow Creek. The fight for his brother's memory and the town's freedom was just beginning. Chapter 5. Days bled into a whirlwind of feverish study. The forbidden book, titled The Chronicle of Harrow's Hunger, was a chilling tapestry of ancient lore and disturbing rituals. It detailed the entity's origins, a creature of pure hunger and darkness, lured by the town's desperation long ago. The pact they forged ensured bountiful harvests, but with the gruesome caveat of a yearly sacrifice. Ethan learned of the intricate rituals leading up to the Harvest Festival, a macabre celebration meant to appease the entity. A cold dread settled in his stomach as the date of the festival drew closer. The once festive atmosphere in Harrow Creek had been replaced by a pervasive paranoia. Whispers followed Ethan wherever he went, a mixture of fear and resentment. The night of the festival arrived, a cold wind whipping through the desolate streets. Town Square was alight with flickering torches, casting grotesque shadows on the fearful faces of the townsfolk. A makeshift altar stood at the center, adorned with macabre symbols. The air crackled with a nervous energy, heavy with the weight of the impending sacrifice. Ethan, disguised in a worn cloak, watched from the shadows. He observed the chilling procession, the masked figures chanting in an unknown tongue, the offering of a young goat sacrificed with practiced brutality. The entity's presence was undeniable, a suffocating pressure that made Ethan's skin crawl. Then came the lottery. Names were drawn from a wooden box, each one a whispered prayer, a moment of agonizing suspense. Sarah clutched his hand, her knuckles white with fear. When the winning name was announced, a collective gasp arose from the crowd. Ethan's heart lurched. It was old man Miller, a kind and weathered soul who used to share stories with him as a child. The man's face, etched with a lifetime of worry, crumpled in despair. His gaze fell on Ethan, a flicker of recognition sparking in his cloudy eyes. A horrifying realization dawned on Ethan. The forbidden book mentioned a loophole in the pact. A willing sacrifice could break its hold. Old man Miller, perhaps sensing Ethan's presence, had purposefully drawn his own name, hoping to end the cycle. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't supposed to happen. He couldn't stand by and watch an innocent man die, not when the book hinted at alternative solutions. Pushing through the crowd, he tore off his disguise, his voice ringing out in the terrified silence. "Stop it! There's another way. We don't have to do this." He faced a sea of stunned faces, fear giving way to a flicker of hope, then doubt. He spoke of his findings, the forbidden knowledge, the possibility of severing the pact without bloodshed. But his words were met with skepticism and murmurs of madness. Years of indoctrination and fear ran deep. Suddenly, a voice rose from the crowd. It was Sarah, her voice firm, despite the tremor in her hands. "He's right," she said. "We can't keep living like this. There has to be another way." A ripple of agreement spread through the crowd. A seed of rebellion was planted, fragile yet hopeful. Ethan knew it wouldn't be easy. He needed to convince the townspeople of a forgotten truth. Their humanity could be their salvation, not another sacrifice. The battle lines were drawn, not between Ethan and the entity, but between fear and hope, between blind acceptance and a desperate fight for freedom. Chapter 6: Descent in Darkness. The townsfolk's hesitant support fueled a fire in Ethan's gut. He knew time was of the essence. Old man Miller, frail and resolute, refused to back down from his sacrifice unless they found another way. The Chronicle of Harrow's Hunger offered a glimmer of hope. Buried deep within its pages, Ethan found a cryptic ritual that could potentially sever the pact. It demanded a rare herb, nightshade bloom, said to grow only in the heart of the bone orchard, and a symbolic offering, a sacrifice of memories, not flesh. The weight of the task settled on his shoulders. The orchard, once a playground of childhood memories, now felt like a hostile, living entity. Yet, he had to try. With Sarah by his side, offering silent encouragement, Ethan ventured back into the swirling mist. The air grew thick with a suffocating dread as they penetrated deeper. Skeletal branches clawed at them, whispers slithered through the fog, weaving tales of his failures and anxieties. He saw visions, fragmented memories of Lucas, a hollow shell of his brother, trapped within the entity's clutches. The whispers morphed into a chorus of accusation, his own guilt amplified by the darkness. Then, a grotesque figure emerged from the shadows. Tall and emaciated, its pale skin stretched taut over a skeletal frame. It resembled a twisted version of a human. It was a victim of the entity's corruption, a chilling testament to the fate that awaited Old Man Miller. The creature lunged, its guttural scream echoing through the trees. A desperate struggle ensued. Sarah, ever resourceful, threw a handful of dust she had gathered from the forbidden room, a concoction mentioned in the book. The creature shrieked, momentarily blinded, allowing Ethan to land a blow that sent it crashing against a gnarled tree. They pressed on, adrenaline masking the gnawing fear. They found the nightshade bloom, its silver petals glowing faintly in the gloom. Plucking it felt like a violation, a theft from this malevolent place. Following the ritual's instructions, they reached a clearing. The ground pulsed with an unnatural energy, a throbbing heart beneath the earth. This was the entity's lair. As they began the chanting, ancient words resonating in the stillness, the whispers turned into a deafening roar. The air crackled with unseen energy. The clearing shimmered, and a monstrous being emerged from its shadowy depths. It resembled a grotesque amalgamation of fear and hunger, a writhing mass of tentacles and razor-sharp teeth. Its hunger was palpable, a suffocating pressure that threatened to consume them whole. Ethan forced his eyes open, fueled by a desperate need to succeed. He held aloft the nightshade bloom and, with a trembling voice, recited the final offering, a confession of their sins, their ancestors' mistakes, and a fervent plea for release from this cycle of fear. The entity recoiled as if struck by a blow. It writhed in the clearing, the air crackling with energy. For a terrifying moment, Ethan feared they had failed. But then, the entity began to shrink, its grotesque form dissolving into a swirling vortex of darkness. With a final, deafening roar, the vortex imploded, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The bone orchard seemed less oppressive, the whispers fading into the rustling of leaves. Exhausted but triumphant, Ethan and Sarah stumbled back towards the tree line. Chapter 7. The Price of Redemption. Emerging from the bone orchard, Ethan and Sarah stumbled into the pre-dawn light. The oppressive weight that had hung over Harrow Creek for so long seemed to have lifted. The air felt clean, the whispers replaced by the chirping of birds. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm them, but adrenaline kept them moving. Reaching the town square, their faces pale and streaked with dirt, they found a scene of chaos. Townspeople, restless and increasingly rebellious, had stormed the makeshift altar, dismantling it with a pent-up fury. Sarah's voice, hoarse but resolute, pierced the pandemonium. "We don't need sacrifices anymore." Ethan found a way to break the pact. Ethan stepped forward, holding aloft the withered nightshade bloom, now a symbol of their liberation. He recounted his experiences, the horrifying entity, and the ritual that severed their binding to it. His words were met with a stunned silence, followed by a wave of disbelief that slowly morphed into cautious hope. A wave of anger washed over the crowd. Years of fear and manipulation bubbled to the surface. They turned on the town elders who had perpetuated the lie, their accusations echoing through the square. The facade of authority crumbled, replaced by a thirst for accountability. The confrontation didn't erase the scars. Fear still lingered, a bitter aftertaste from years of living under the entity's shadow. But a flicker of resilience sparked in the eyes of the townspeople. They began to speak of rebuilding, of finding ways to heal and prosper without the pact's dark bargain. Days turned into weeks, then months. Ethan helped them navigate the uncertainty. With the knowledge gleaned from the forbidden book, he led expeditions into the bone orchard, charting its dangers and identifying the nightshade bloom, ensuring they could replicate the ritual if needed. The once lush orchard remained tainted, a constant reminder of their past. Yet, a tentative peace settled over Harrow Creek. The whispers, though not entirely gone, were a faint echo compared to their former intensity. But for Ethan, the battle left its mark. He didn't find Lucas. The visions in the orchard fueled a heartbreaking realization. His brother was lost, consumed by the entity long ago. Yet, his sacrifice had not been in vain. He had broken the cycle, freeing Lucas' memory and the town from the clutches of fear. One clear night, Ethan stood at Lucas's grave, a single nightshade bloom tucked behind the weathered headstone. The wind rustled through the leaves, a faint whisper that carried a sense of peace. He may never have gotten his brother back, but he had claimed a different kind of victory, a victory for hope, for resilience, and for the enduring power of the human spirit. Chapter 8. Whispers in the Wind. 5 years had passed since Ethan severed the pact with the entity. Harrow Creek was a changed town. The fear that had permeated every corner had faded, replaced by a cautious optimism. The annual Harvest Festival, once a macabre celebration, was now a joyous affair, a celebration of life and resilience. Ethan, however, remained a solitary figure. The nightmares that had plagued him in the aftermath of his ordeal had subsided, but the memories lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness he had faced. He still saw Lucas sometimes, in the fleeting shadows or the rustle of leaves in the wind, a hollow echo of the brother he'd lost. He had become a reluctant hero, a role he never sought. The townspeople, once wary, now treated him with a mix of gratitude and awe. Yet, he felt a disconnect, an outsider forever marked by his brush with the entity. One crisp autumn afternoon, Ethan found himself drawn back to the Bone Orchard. It was a place he rarely ventured, a chilling reminder of his past. The twisted trees still stood, a skeletal silhouette against the twilight sky, but the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. He walked deeper into the heart of the orchard, the silence broken only by the crunch of dead leaves under his boots. He stopped at a clearing, the spot where he'd confronted the entity. A single, silver-petaled nightshade bloom bloomed defiantly in the center. He knelt beside it, a bittersweet pang tightening his chest. A rustling sound startled him. He turned, his hand instinctively reaching for the pocket knife that had become his constant companion. A small figure emerged from behind a gnarled tree, a young girl with curious eyes the color of his own. "Are you lost, mister?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan relaxed, a smile gracing his lips for the first time in a long time. "No, little one. I just needed to see this place again." The girl tilted her head. "It's scary, isn't it? Grandma says there used to be bad things here." "There were," Ethan admitted, "but they're gone now. We made sure of that." He knelt down to her level, his gaze meeting hers. "Sometimes, though, scary things leave whispers behind. But whispers can't hurt you. Not if you listen closely enough." The girl giggled, a sound that resonated through the once silent clearing. She plucked a fallen leaf from the ground, its edges already tinged with brown. "Like this leaf? It whispers stories of summer winds and warm sunshine, even though it's fall now." Ethan's heart ached with a newfound hope. Perhaps, he thought, the whispers weren't just reminders of the darkness. Maybe they were also echoes of resilience, of the strength it took to confront fear and find the light. He looked at the girl, a symbol of a future free from the entity's grip. The wind picked up, rustling through the leaves of the Bone Orchard, carried a faint whisper, a melody that wasn't laced with fear. It was a whisper of hope, a whisper of life, a whisper of a future yet to be written. Ethan closed his eyes, a small smile playing on his lips. He wasn't sure what the future held, but as long as the whispers continued, so would he.